So a while ago I talked about The Abyss on my channel after the 4K re-release happened in theaters, and it made me also realize that there were only a couple of James Cameron movies that I had not talked about on the channel, and I wanted to cover them as well and give you my thoughts on those, and one of them felt right opportune for right now, which was True Lies. Not only is the movie celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, but the movie was one of the most demanded on physical media for a long time, and it recently had its 4K release, and in fact, I have that 4K release. I pre-ordered it a couple of months ago. I didn't have to pay like $200 on eBay or whatever because apparently that was a thing that is going on right now. But it took a couple of extra weeks to get over here. And so I thought I'd talk to you guys about it. What's interesting to me about True Lies, and I've seen it a bunch of times now, first on TV years ago and now again, I feel like this is a movie where it is both at once and not at all a James Cameron movie. And by that I mean, when you watch the rest of his movies, when you see everything else that he's pulled off over the years, you'll see that there is a sense of grand scale to them. You know, everything from The Terminator to Abyss, T2, Aliens, Titanic, Avatar, The Way of Water. Those are massive films. True Lies has those moments as well, but it is mainly a self-contained story with a very action comedy-like feel throughout most of it, while also being his version of a James Bond movie as much as, you know, you can expect him to make out of that kind of a premise. And that's essentially what you get with True Lies. It's nowhere near Cameron's best. I would say it's actually one of his least good films. I don't love it as much as some of the other ones, but I get a kick out of watching it nonetheless, and watching it last night again, I did still get a kick out of watching it. And that's also mostly because you have two actors at the center of it who are having a great time with the premise. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis work very well, and as Harry and Helen Tasker, what they bring to the roles is genuinely very fun, especially Harry Tasker. I mean, Schwarzenegger is having too much fun with this role, and you can very clearly tell, like, he is playing a super spy who is just about good at every other thing like you can possibly imagine, especially when it comes to, you know, getting things done. The guy is very, very effective. He's a force of nature. He barely takes a hit in this movie. Even when he does take a hit, it's temporary. Otherwise, he is perfectly fine, and he survived all kinds of stuff. But what I really like about Helen's character is that when you're first introduced to her, she's a working wife at home, not really, you know, having much adventure in her life. And then eventually, when she does get involved in stuff because of a plot that I'll talk more about in a second, her reactions to that are the complete opposite. Obviously, to her, killing 5 guys in a second is horrifying. It's not the same thing as Harry killing 5 guys in a row going, done, come on this way, let's go. It's like there's a very different reaction, and the fact that this was carrying throughout the entire third act especially, I thought it was extremely effective. It gave some, you know, gave an organic feel to the entire proceedings. You know, not everything is fun when it comes to stuff like that. Of course, the plotline involving her having an affair with Simon, Bill Paxton's character. Bill Paxton in this movie is having a fun time as well, but it is also it's this thing when you look at the context when the movie was being made. This was around the time that Cameron was getting a divorce, and when you look at the movie, there's definitely aspects of that play into the story, and, you know, trying to keep love alive with doing the most extreme stuff. I guess that's his response to it. I don't know, man. I like the guy as a director. I don't know about his personal life, but the man has had a bunch of failed marriages, so I mean, you know, I can't really comment on that part. But as far as the movie goes, that is a major chunk of it, and that it deviates so much from the now extremely stereotyped terrorist plot which is going on with the Crimson Jihad and everything with Salim Abu Aziz, played by Art Malik, and also Juno, played by Tia Carrere. So all of that stuff is just, you know, to the side for a while as this plot kicks in, and then the final act is like, hey, the terrorists are back, we gotta stop them from detonating a bunch of nukes, one of them going off, in fact. And I think that as a whole, the movie is just such a wacky experience, and it's a very diverting experience for the most part. Like I said, very different from usual Cameron fare, but it very much is the movie that feels like the buffer between T2 and Titanic. It's like two big movies that he made, both multiple Oscar winners, and he was like, all right, in the middle of all that, let me give something to people to bide the time. Here's a fun action thriller, go nuts. Also, it'll probably address a few personal things. Peace. That's kind of the entire premise of True Lies. The action is actually pretty great though. It is visually really remarkable, and the final act is a lot of fun. The whole bridge sequence where he has to save Helen unless the car, tip over and, they all die was really, really riveting stuff. The big finale involving the plane and the building, also really awesome. I mean, you cannot deny there's some really, really great stuff here. The chase sequence that takes place through the mall after the bathroom shootout, and then eventually, taking the elevators up and all that. Very, very exciting. I mean, the action sequences in this are genuinely a lot of fun. The humor in this is really good, especially from Tom Arnold as Gib, who is Harry's partner. All the stuff that's coming out of him is pretty much entirely gold. I mean, the guy's having a genuine laugh in this movie, and he absolutely commits to that. There's a great, orchestral score from Brad Fiedel once again, which is extremely fun, and Cameron does do a good job of directing it. It's just that, it's very narratively scattered. Some things don't really get much development. In fact, there's barely any development for a lot of characters. But overall, I still have a very fun time watching True Lies, even if it is not my favorite Cameron film. And it was nice to revisit it in 4K, which... Let's talk about the 4K transfer for a second. So this has gotten some critiques because the image grain is gone from the original version. Now it's this smoothened out looking thing. For the most part, I had no problem with it, though there were a few shots where things were really smoothened out and it looked a little too waxy at times, and those were extremely noticeable. Like there's points where, especially with character features, it just looks a little too smooth. There's no creases on the face anywhere. So some of that was very noticeable. Not all the time, but when it was noticeable, it was very blatantly noticeable. Overall, though, I thought the viewing experience was fine, and ironically, despite all that, it's still the best I've seen the movie look at home, like in terms of, home media releases. And so I am still glad to own the movie on 4K. I'm glad it's out there. I'll leave the opinion to you guys on whether or not, you liked whatever the AI or whatever thing he's using, Cameron uses for his movies. It didn't really affect The Abyss at all, because I watched that in 4K as well. It looked fine, and Titanic looked fine as well. So I don't know. It feels like a case-by-case thing. That's just my take on that. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I will see you guys at the movies.